We begin at State House, Nairobi, where the government today staged a spirited defense of the controversial housing levy, with Principal Secretary Charles Hinga terming the Affordable Housing Initiative as a sweetheart deal for Kenyans. In an animated presentation that saw the PS field questions from journalists, Hinga decried what he termed misinformation about the affordable housing plan, and at some point blamed it on what he referred to as poor communication from the government. As our very own Chimtai Goin reports, the PS battled to explain the workings of a plan that includes a requirement that prospecting homeowners raise 10% of the total cost of the house before they can be allowed to transit from a rental to a buying arrangement. Take a listen.
Actually,
in physical terms, this was a high-energy display as the Housing Principal Secretary Charles Hinga dominated the podium at a press briefing at the State House. In between sips of water and occasionally wiping off sweat, the housing PS pitched for the controversial housing levy, dismissing criticism of the scheme as uninformed.
You know, nyinyi hamuelewi maneno.
Flanked by State House spokesperson Hussein Mohammed, the PS fielded questions from journalists who questioned, among other things, the place of the housing scheme in the government's priorities at a time when the cost of living is shooting through the roof.
Please, let's disagree where we have to disagree. But let's not beat this thing so hard that you want to have it fail. Because if it fails, we have not sorted out the economics of the country. We have not sorted out the housing issue. We have not sorted out the urbanization issue. So this is a conversation that we should be able to look at each other in the eyes and say, watu wanatuambia ni shilingi 1,000. Hiyo mimi nimekubali. Wacha niweke hiyo 1,000. If you're going to guarantee me we're going to stop these slums from coming up. If I'm going to have a decent home.
the story about housing is beyond the units or owning the homes. It's about a deliberate decision by the president to intervene in creation of employment. How many, I just read some statistics for you, 3 to 5 direct jobs, about 8 indirect jobs for every housing unit that is going to be.
The tone of the address showing that President William Ruto was not relenting in his quest to implement the affordable housing plan.
We cannot keep burying our heads in the sand. All indications of the future is urban, and therefore bold decisions and bold actions need to be taken. And of course, great achievements are always the product of bold decisions and bold actions. The president, all through, emphasizes and will emphasize the importance of people's active participation in this transformative journey.
91% of Kenyans in Nairobi, they rent today. 91%, that's our statistic in 2017. So I'm sure it's probably more. Our plan is to subsidize the rent, but through a rent-to-own structure.
Casting aside the strong opposition to the housing initiative, the PS outlined the modalities of what it would take for one to benefit and become a homeowner.
You must have raised 10% deposit for that unit. Number 2, you must go to Boma Yangu and you must fill in. There's certain information that we need. You just register and then you start saving. 2,500, that's the minimum. The more you save, the more it means when the deposit is required, you will have it. So we're just saying, put the kidogo ile amount, which is our off-take plan, but please save as much as possible.
On the controversial proposal to deduct 3% of employees' payslip dues, the PS pressed on, saying the deductions would be short-term pain for long-term gain.
Most of you are saying, well, voluntary. You see, when it is given by law, if I'm going to get $1 billion a month, it means I can confidently go out there and call investors and tell them, for as long as that law is there, 3 years from now, I'll still be collecting the $1 billion. So let me tell you in simple terms. You know today something called fuel levy. We all pay fuel levy today if you're driving. Fuel levy is the one that has enabled us to build all these roads you're seeing here.
Hinga also outlined the options available for unemployed Kenyans wishing to buy into the initiative.
The people who work in the informal sector are allowed to save through the voluntary scheme. So the housing fund has 2 schemes. It has the mandatory and it has the voluntary.
It further became apparent that if the bill received a stamp of approval from Parliament, those wishing to contribute will have to wait up to 3 years before the houses were complete. The housing initiative is expected to dominate conversation in the coming days, even as Kenyans wait to know the fate of the bill when it will be tabled in Parliament for debate. Chemutai Goin, Citizen TV.